using local revenue to grow the state general fund, it appears the Senate of Virginia will be doing just that by voting on a budget matter that can be characterized as a local revenue grab. Hello, I'm Phyllis Errico, General Counsel. Today at the Capitol, VACo stood with the law enforcement community to oppose a Senate measure that transfers revenue from local ordinance violations to the state budget. VACo, VML, the Virginia Sheriff's Association, the Virginia Chiefs of Police, and Senator Errico, a former state trooper, held a press conference to discuss the important issue of state collection of local fees and fines. These fees and fines result from the violation of local ordinances that parallel state statutes. The most common example is motor vehicle infractions. It is important to note that these summonses are written, staffed, and carried out by local law enforcement and not state police. Currently, these funds are deposited into the local general fund, and they are used to support local needs such as courts, public safety, education, and other important services. These fees and fines were highlighted as a possible source of additional state revenue in a September 2011 report of the State Auditor of Public Accounts. A recommendation from the Senate Finance Committee has targeted these fees and fines to be collected and taken by the Commonwealth of Virginia. The proposal includes collection by the State Comptroller's Office, who will act as the fiscal agent holding the amounts in an agency fund. Disbursement will be on a monthly basis to the localities based on a formula proposed by the State Auditor of Public Accounts. The proposed formula is cumbersome and will result in less state funding for law enforcement. Not only is this a direct rate of increasingly limited local revenue, but it will result in further strain on local budgets, producing greater pressure on local real estate taxes. In addition, with the state acting as fiscal agent, this fund can easily be capped or withheld from localities, as we've seen in the past with car taxes and diminishing 599 funding. This is yet another measure to take limited local funds that are used directly for local services to finance obligations of the state. This concept was the subject of at least 2 pieces of legislation this General Assembly session, and VACo worked diligently to defeat these measures. Senate Bill 500, introduced by Senator Watkins, was handily defeated in a Senate Transportation Committee, and House Bill 834, introduced by Delegate Carr, was rejected by the House General Laws Committee. Despite the defeat of these bills, we find the issue arising yet again, this time in a Senate budget recommendation. According to the explanation in the budget amendment, the purpose of the fine diversion amendment is to provide a 9% pay raise for the district court clerks. Please join VACo in voicing objections to yet another example of the state robbing local funds to meet state obligations. Contact your senators today and oppose this local revenue grab by the Senate. Thank you, and stay tuned for VACo's Executive Director, Jim Campbell's speech at today's press conference.
Thank you, Senator. I am Jim Campbell with the Virginia Association of Counties and representing all 95 counties in the Commonwealth. And with me today is Mayor Bob Coiner from the town of Gordonsville, representing the Virginia Municipal League and all 190 towns and 39 cities in Virginia. We do support Senator Errico's attempt to repeal the amendment that we're talking about. This amendment, in fact, is a money grab by the General Assembly. The amendment really is yet another attempt for the state to reach into the pockets of local governments and draw out local dollars to help balance the state budget. Let me explain just briefly what a couple of previous money grabs have been. In the last 4 years, local governments have been asked to return $50 million or more per year of state aid to local governments, which includes funding for 599 constitutional officers and the like. $200 million plus in the last 4 years, the state has asked us to give back. In addition, in 2010, the state shifted the Line of Duty Act requirements, which these folks are all beneficiaries of a Line of Duty Act, and it has been a state program for several decades. And in 2010, they shifted the funding for that source to local governments. Again, shifting the state responsibility funding to local governments. Now, these money grabs are particularly troublesome, particularly when you consider that while the state is seeing an increase in state revenues, and while the state started this budget year with over $500 million in the bank, locals continue to see declining revenues. Locals continue to see declining real estate assessments. Locals are already cutting services because they don't have the money to do it. They are cutting employees, and in some cases even raising taxes, unlike what the Chesapeake member suggested. These locals have been using these local governments have been using local ordinances to enforce local issues there, and local fines and forfeitures for decades. And now the state wants to grab that money, these local dollars that we are generating, which fund a number of local services, including law enforcement, parks and recreation, public education, if you will. Now the state wants to grab these local dollars and use them for themselves. Let's be honest about this. Every time the state takes money away from our local governments must either raise taxes or cut services. We've heard that mentioned earlier today. Let's begin to hold our state legislators accountable. If they want the money for state services, raise state revenues. Don't go robbing the local government treasurers. Local governments will and do what needs to be done to fund their local responsibilities. We continue to join Senator Errico in opposing this amendment that is yet another money grab from local government. Let's stop this shift and shaft attitude. Enough is enough.